We bring in California Congressman John Garamendi for his thoughts on this. Congressman, your senator, Dianne Feinstein, at the center of the beginning of all of these allegations from Dr. Ford. The president last night had some thoughts about that at his rally. Take a listen. We'll get your thoughts.
Remember, Dianne Feinstein, did you leak? Remember her answer. Did you leak the document? What? No, no, I didn't leak. Well, wait 1 minute. Did we leak? No, we didn't leak it.
Dianne Feinstein at the center of the question of exactly how Dr. Ford's name came out publicly within days, if not hours, before the vote's scheduled. She's your senator, Congressman. You okay with how this was handled?
This entire thing has been a very, very difficult process from the very, very beginning. Kavanaugh was controversial long before Feinstein's letter ever came to light. As I understand it, Dr. Ford did not want to go public. It took some time for her to actually release that Feinstein to deliver the letter.
The reason it went public was because somebody leaked her name. The question would be...
Well, I don't know. I just don't know the answer to that.
Let me ask you this. Do you agree with Lindsey Graham, who says that part of this investigation should be looking at how Dr. Ford's name was leaked, how a woman who alleged a sexual assault and wanted to remain private was somehow thrust into the public spotlight? Should that be investigated as well?
That doesn't seem to be relevant going forward. The
Really?
FBI has been given, well, just hang on a second. The FBI has been given a very specific task looking at the accusations that have been made. How those accusations came to pass, how they became part of the controversy is an issue that the Senate can take up. What we're focused on now is the FBI investigation. I'm not going to opine one way or another about the outcome of that, but it's extremely important that it go through, that it take place, and as the president said just last night, that it be a thorough investigation. That'll inform us about what is the most important issue here, and that is Kavanaugh's nomination, his job interview, if you will, to be on the Supreme Court. We'll see what happens. Let the Senate work out how information became available or not. There's been plenty of other controversy within the Senate process in the Judiciary Committee.
I'm not going to get a yes or no in terms of whether you think the FBI, as Lindsey Graham said, should look into how Dr. Ford's name became public. You called it a job interview.
To me, sir, it seems to me that that's not relevant to the case at this moment going forward.
How in a time, though, when Democrats are talking all the time about Me Too and all the time about the rights of women and women should be believed, they should be listened to, they should be respected, how is it not relevant that a woman who said, I want to remain anonymous, suddenly had her identity put in front of every person in America who watches television or reads a newspaper? How is that not relevant? And it was a Democratic senator who was the one who had the name.
Well, you really have two different things here, and let's just take them one at a time. One issue is the allegations that have been made by Dr. Ford. And the FBI is going to be looking at that and all of the relevant matters to that. That's the critical path. That's what's really important ahead of us. Now, the way in which the Judiciary Committee came to that information about Dr. Ford is another issue. It is an issue of importance of some, certainly to the Senate, to the Judiciary Committee. There are many other issues within the Judiciary Committees.
I'm just not hearing any outrage on behalf of this alleged victim that her anonymity was destroyed by, at least conceivably, someone who had access to that letter. The person who had access to that letter was Dianne Feinstein's office.
Well, no, there's not going to be outrage on my part. She did come forward. That's a question of the Senate Judiciary Committee's processes. The question before the American public, and frankly before the Senate now, is the FBI investigation about the allegations that have been made by Ford and by others.
If that's the issue, and the FBI comes back as most experts have said that they suspect they will, which is a report that says this is what she says, this is what he says, so far, Mark Judge and others have said publicly, conceivably, what they're going to tell the FBI. Leland Kaiser saying, I have no memory of this event multiple times. If the FBI comes back and says, this is he said, she said, there's no corroborating evidence, and you got 4 people who say this didn't happen, would you then say, okay, time to support Judge Kavanaugh to be on the Supreme Court?
Well, let's see what the details are in that report. It may very well be that it is inconclusive, in which case that issue will be relevant. There are many other issues with regard to Kavanaugh's position on very, very important matters that are, as you said, as at the top of this show, the new session for the Supreme Court is now underway, and there are going to be some extremely important issues. For example, having to do with corruption, that is corruption in the electoral process.
Yeah.
Those are extremely important issues.
I'm still not hearing. Fair to say, though, that just because an FBI investigation clears him, conceivably, that's not enough to support him. Appreciate it,
That's
Congressman.
correct.
Thank you very much, and we'll have you back as always. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Fox News Alert, we are awaiting President Trump's departure from the White House for a rally in Wheeling, West Virginia this evening. He's kicking off a 5-state campaign tour as we get closer to those midterm elections, this coming amid the drama surrounding Supreme Court nominee Judge Brett Kavanaugh. For more on the Kavanaugh confirmation drama and how effective it will be as an issue to turn out voters from both parties in November, let's go to our panel. RNC spokeswoman Kayleigh McEnany and Dave Brown, Democratic strategist and former senior advisor to Washington State Senator Patty Murray. Great to have you both.
Hey, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Kayleigh, does a prolonged Supreme Court fight energize a lot of your voters who might not be as fired up about a typical midterm election year?
Oh, there is simply no doubt about it. You know, a lot of voters in 2016 voted on the Supreme Court. In fact, according to exit polls, 1 in 5 voters voted because of the Supreme Court. And of those Supreme Court voters, 56% broke for President Trump. So there's no denying this motivates our voters. And this is particularly key in an election year where Democrats do have an enthusiasm advantage by about 5 to 8 points. So the fact that this is going on, I can tell you this, we are fired up in the Republican Party, and we are going to the polls because of what we see Democrats doing.
Dave, what's the impact on Democrats if Kavanaugh is confirmed, defeated, or for some reason this drags on longer?
Yeah, Mike, I think under any scenario, Democrats are energized, and you see that both in how, to date, we've overperformed in turnouts in special elections across the country. You've seen that in the generic ballot that has Democrats ahead of Republicans on average around 9 to 10 points, perhaps even higher. And you also see that in the fact that 81% of Democrats in the latest Pew poll, when polled, said that the Supreme Court now tops their list of priorities that they care about. So, you know, under any scenario, whether Judge Kavanaugh is confirmed or whether he's not confirmed, this is going to be a rallying point for Democrats, and it's going to motivate folks to the polls.
Kayleigh, there's been some reporting that this Kavanaugh battle could help Republicans with the Senate, but perhaps hurt with keeping the House. Your thoughts?
I don't think that's the case because, you know, as Dave just noted, Supreme Court is topping the list in some of these polls. And when the Supreme Court tops the list, that mobilizes Republican turnout. And in this election in particular, our internal numbers show that the higher the turnout, the better it is for Republicans. It kind of flips conventional wisdom on its head this time. So in the House, I think this motivates turnout. And in the Senate in particular, this is a very big deal, Mike, because we don't have a lot of polling as to how Kavanaugh is perceived post-hearing.
Right.
There's 1 or 2 polls that I've seen come out so far by Public Opinion Strategies, 1 in West Virginia, 1 in Arizona. The one in West Virginia shows by a 30-point margin West Virginia voters want Kavanaugh on the bench. Bad news for Joe Manchin if he votes against Kavanaugh. And in Arizona, too, a majority want him on the bench. So in the Senate, this is a very big deal for Republicans.
Dave, what's your analysis on that? Supreme Court definitely fires up Republican voters. What about Senate versus House?
Yeah, let me get to that. I will say I think it's going to be interesting to see whether Kayleigh's hypothesis rings true come November. A long time conventional wisdom has it that the Supreme Court is really a rallying cry for Republican elites. I'm skeptical that this is going to be the kind of issue that really animates a conservative base, especially if conservatives perceive the White House as caving to Democrats. If anything, I imagine that there are a number of Republicans who are enraged at the fact that the White House has agreed to an FBI investigation. But to your broader question, Mike, look, both in the House and the Senate, Democrats are focused on kitchen table issues. They're motivated to vote because they are opposed to this president and to his agenda, but they're also focused on health care. And they know that if Republicans are reelected and maintain majorities both in the House and the Senate, the ACA is at risk. Pre-existing conditions are on the table, and a whole host of kitchen table issues, tax relief included, are really up for grabs in a way that's going to hurt working middle-class families.
All right, we have a little bit of time left, very little. With our remaining time, I want both of you to weigh in. Does Judge Kavanaugh get through? And if so, what's the energizing effect? Kayleigh?
No doubt Judge Kavanaugh gets through. He's undergone 6, now 7 FBI background checks. He will get through. He deserves to get through. Due process will have its day. Judge Kavanaugh will become Justice Kavanaugh.
Dave?
Mike, I'm not going to predict other than to say I'm very pleased that we finally have what folks have been asking for a long time, which is an FBI investigation that will allow for a thorough and fair process and a way to really fact-find the very serious claims that have been brought forward against him.
Dave, if the FBI probe doesn't uncover anything shocking, is there a next play for Senate Democrats?
Look, I think the record speaks for itself. We've laid out our concerns in terms of our substantive concerns about his judicial philosophy and his rulings and why we think he's ill-suited to sit on the Supreme Court on the merits. But ultimately, that will then become a political question for members of the Senate. Is he fit to serve? Or, on balance, are the allegations against him such that they disqualify him? Or, and members have to take this vote. This is a tough vote. Or, in fact, is he qualified to serve for the highest court in the land?
Kayleigh, do you worry about this process scaring away qualified people in the future? I mean, do you really want to put your family through this if this is what it's going to be like?
Certainly, I have a deep fear of that. You heard President Trump say, I am worried if I go back to some of the others I was considering that they would say no. No one wants their family dragged through the mud. You saw the pain on Judge Kavanaugh's face, the tears he poured out, the conversations he's had to have with his daughters. This is heartbreaking what this man has been through. As he said, a whole lot in just a week's time. So I do worry about that very deeply.
Kayleigh McEnany, Dave Brown, thanks so much.
Thanks, Mike.